Yeah, I don't know. I think there's a
But
point to be
I
had.
do actually want to go back to that musical discussion though about like bringing in these influences because really like hip hop from the beginning, like hip hop transformed disco, and it's just like was disco cool at the time? And it's just like things that were
Probably not.
uncool being transformed.
I'm not aware of how much. I'm not aware how popular disco was in terms of like, um, the. I mean, it was a primarily, at least initially, a primarily, African American types genre. So maybe it's still stuck around in those circles after a bit of the quote unquote popularity died off, mostly held by a very stringent conservative white America. But so I don't know.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I think I might be drawing the discussion too broadly, and we can go back to Peep. But it was
No, I
just
think
more about
I
like genres being brought in, and I kind of felt like these were two very like you never really saw these reference points being brought in so much, like pop punk emo and boy bands, and all of a sudden Peep and Brockhampton come in, and
Right.
they're huge.
No, I think there's a comparison to being made. I think it's like I think it's just I don't know want to say maybe it's just a generation thing because it's like those times were popular for these kids, so then they take that is their influence now to take in and apply to also what is now currently popular. Or
yeah, and like I think hip hop has done this sort of thing a lot. Like I think Patrick's point is a valid point that he raised, which is like hip hop has taken genres and incorporated into and like look at like I mean a hip hop and like electronic music, you know what I mean? Like how it was able to incorporate that.
right,
And in the 2010s, especially the late 2010s or now early 2020s, hip hop has taken things that were like uncool and made them cool. I mean,
right,
depending on the level. I mean, look at all of like and also things that weren't previously cool just in culture, like hip hop's relationship with anime. Anime and
right,
hip hop have always been closely linked, and hip hop has made anime cool to like now.
right,
Like, I think that and it used to be looked at as a fucking nerd or a weeb if you liked anime.
right,
Now it's like a common thing, like
right.
I think it's really cool that things that were previously niche are popular now, and some of those things are largely in part to hip hop because hip hop at one time was niche, and now I mean, and it's been everything for the last like 20 years.
Right. Yeah, and I think even nowadays there's something to say about the point that you're making about like taking an uncool thing and making it cool. It's like, now if I could cite another thing that's kind of similar to what we're talking about, emo pop punk, it's like I can't tell you how many times a trap metal artist nowadays, like a real one, will be like, yeah, I was listening to System of a Down and Korn a lot when I was young, and then like
Hmm.
they kind of took that and put it into it. So there's
Yeah,
the
well,
like.
System of a Down was always good, so fuck you if you think the System of a Down wasn't always good.
I used to run in circles of people who would be like, who would throw System of a Down in that just like, oh, it's just new metal, so it sucks.
I mean,
Circles,
yeah, there are people who would always look down their nose at System of a Down and Deftones, but
right?
I mean that's a
They're
whole other
stupid.
discussion.
Yeah, they're stupid. Let's make that clear right now. They're all idiots. They were never correct in the first. They were never. There was never a point that even they should have even been considered. Like from the jump. Like yeah.
Yeah,
It's
System of
not
a
Pretty
Down.
much, System of a Down is new metal, and so is Mr. Bungle.
And System of a Down are also better than Mr. Bungle. Fucking what was it, Mr. Bungle, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I
I'll
haven't.
co-sign that. I will co-sign that Toxicity is better than any Mr. Bungle album.
I agree. I agree.
I've only heard one album for each band, so I'll hold off.
Mr. Bungle, I will like. I mean, the California record is a good record, but like their self-titled is not a good record.
I
Uh,
only heard Disco Volante.
okay,
I mean, I think
that
all the
that one's
Bungle
okay.
records are good records, but they're all very insular and like kind of I don't know. They have that Frank Zappa quality to them where they're cool, but it's like you listen to it and it's like, I don't know. There's something
There's a
there's
there's
a
a
very
great
indefinable quality of self-satisfied, masturbatory, whatever the fuck to it.
It's a bit taxing.
Yeah,
Just even from when I listened to...
unnecessarily intellectually taxing.
Yeah.
Like, why do I have to think about this so hard? It's just fucking music. Chill. Like, I think Mars Volta gets that right. Like, they still make music you can think about if you want to, but you can still rock the fuck out to it.
Mm-hmm.
On their good shit. On their bad shit, it's just not that good. Like, they have good and bad releases. So
yeah.
There's a review of this which I'm now struggling to find, but it says that like it smells like the Mr. Bungle album like smells like dirty socks or something, or like old socks and something else, and I'm like, yeah, it's exactly what it smells like.
I have one friend on RYM who, if he actually listens to this podcast, he is banned from commenting, but I'm getting a really mean personal message from him if he listens to this podcast.
Rip.
Anyway, so where are we on the Peep Discog?
We're on to Castles 2, because I think we're all good on
Castles
Hellboy.
2. All right, Castles 2 has a song that I would love if I can never play in public, which is Witchblade.
Witchblade is a highlight.
Witchblade is
Witchblade, but I would never play it in public.
Just because it's such like a pop, it's such like a pop punk
it
kind of song.
It sounds like an anthem for cutting your wrists.
Just the lyric. When Tracy's like, "Ask me if I'm alright. Do you want me to lie?" Whew,
it does. Like if you actually listen to it and then like put it in context, the way they say like Witchblade sounds like Switchblade, the way they pronounce it.
Yeah.
But it's so catchy. I love the song, but it just kind of sounds like you're listening to a pop punk song that's like about like cutting your wrist, but making it sound catchy.
It's definitely like one of the most like the strongest examples of like the melodic like hook that Peep could write or sing rather, because it's really like that is very in your face, like we had talked about earlier. Like it's very in your face, and
it's really opposite to what he was doing on California Girls, which
right.
I like, but I think it's equally as good. Again, I just, as a 35-year-old almost man, that made me sound like I'm almost a man, not like I'm almost 35. As almost 35-year-old man, that still didn't sound great. I'm still going to go with it. I still would not really like to. It just sounds juvenile almost, but I really like it. I don't know, but it's like I also love Coheed and Cambria, and I would not feel great about playing that out of my car either. Sorry, Ryan. So, like, it's got that same sort of vibe to me. Like, it's really good, really catchy, but kind of juvenile.
I mean, the way that they go, like Tracy, like says, like, when I die, bury me with all my ice on. Then Peep comes in, when I die, bury me with all my ice on.
I love that though. That's so good. That's so good.
Bury me without the lights on.
Yeah, it's like
that's great.
It's so good, and like the pass offs and everything, like the chemistry is so strong there, and it just feels like an anthem from when the song comes in, because even the producer tag when it's like, oh, big head on the beat, and then like it just comes right in with the like the drop. It just feels like that huge anthem, and I feel like it's going to be one of the defining like emo rap songs from this era, because it's a super popular song.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that, after Hellboy, if a lot of people are like, what the fuck is this? I think Switchblade was like the beginning of a turning point. Definitely. I think this EP, but I think mainly Switchblades was like the turning point where I think it was the first moment a lot of people turned their heads around and been like, well, wait a minute. There is something here.
But this has Dying Out West on it.
Dying Out West on it.
My favorite song on here. I love the raw delivery on this.
It's a perfect little pop tune. Like it is a pop tune, sort of, basically. Yeah.
It's an incredible song.
It has like a pop melody to it, but I feel like the ragged edge to it. It just, I don't know. I think hearing this was the moment that I really bought Peep Peep emotionally.
Yeah, and it's a very raw, like emotional tape. And it's like I think it's their best collaboration together, like just as a
And I
tandem.
don't want to say that I don't buy their emotion on Witchblade. It's just more that hearing that like in public just is kind of like it. I don't
Sure,
want to
it
come
can
across
be
the wrong way about that. It's just like it's weird to have the dichotomy of such a catchy song about such a dark topic.
right, and it feels like it feels like or at least compared to like Dying Out West, like doesn't feel as much like potentially like abrasive in a sense where you could be turned off by the fact that it's so catchy about a topic. Dying Out West is like deliberately a sad song.
Right.
Dying Out West feels appropriate in the notes that it's hitting. I don't know.
I think the other thing is that going back to it not being abrasive as like Switchblades and more, up front. I think this is probably on the EP Tracy's most like whacked out performance, where he just right after the chorus is finished, he keeps the energy up with the like look in the mirror, I see like he just immediately gets right into it, and he keeps that melody going, and it's a good song. It's so good.
Yeah, I also want to shout out Past the Castle Walls. That's a really good song.
Past the Castle Walls is pretty good. Re-listening to this, I have a better appreciation for Your Favorite Dress.
That's a good song too. I mean, all the songs on here.
Yeah,
All the songs on here.
It's great. It really gets its point across in a short amount of time. I feel the production is great. I did not want to come across critical when I said that. It's my second favorite song on here. That's behind Dying Out West. And I think every song on here is great. I think their chemistry has never been stronger than it was on this tape. Again, this was the release that really sold me on Peep, more or less. I'd heard the Clams single via being into Clams, and I kind of thought of that more like the way I love Bird on a Wire as a Harry Fraud song, if that makes sense. And I kind of tolerate riffraff. And that's the most insulting thing I've ever said on this podcast. I just compared Lil Peep to riffraff.
Hey,
a lot of white boy energy.
Yeah, it's riffraff, definitely very, very white.
The thing is, Lil Peep actually had talent and investment and wrote things, whereas riffraff is exactly what his name implied.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think
I don't really have much else to say about him. I mean, he surrounded himself with the right people and made good music by osmosis, essentially. Like, he was able to be there while other people crafted good music, and he babbled shit.
Right.
I only really know
He was
riffraff
like
for
an
that
Andy
one
Warhol character.
Yeah, I only really know riffraff for that one feature on Currency's Pilot Talk 2, which is on my favorite song on that album.
Pilot Talk 3.
I forget what
he fucking ruins it.
Yeah, it's Pilot Talk 3. Yeah, his feature's not the best. But,
Cathedral Box. Shut the fuck up.
But the rest of the track still is too good to not be my favorite. Like, in spite of him.
Like, Harry Fraud is on that album for one beat, and he had to bring fucking riffraff with him.
Riffraff was attached to the bottom of the car like De Niro in Cape Fear. Like he's like holding onto the bottom of the car, following this like family terrorizing them, but it's just terrorizing Harry Fraud.
Except instead of a car, it's a jet. He's just hanging on to the wheel as he's like as it's going, and it's like his hair's getting blown back, so you see all of his MTV tattoos on his neck.
I have an easy time picturing riffraff in the theater in the Cape Fear scene where he's just like throwing popcorn everywhere
and he's laughing like hysterically. Yeah. That's a good movie. I rewatched it like a few weeks ago. It's a good movie.
Yeah, I gotta revise my rating of the Scorsese Cape Fear. I think that De Niro definitely, like, he pretty much carries that on his back.
It's a very pulpy, like it feels like a De Palma movie, but it's good. I mean, De Palma's good, but like it's like a good De Palma movie. Like it feels
I kind of
like
wish that Scorsese would get in that mode more often, just like do some pulp shit.
he really didn't do that much pulp. Like, it's
Bringing Out the Dead has a pulp
yeah.
to it.
The scene where they're in the nightclub and they revive the guy, and they're like saying it's because of Jesus they revived him.
Well, I feel like Bringing Out the Dead with the general color palette and the way Goodman's performance, I feel like
Mhm.
that's pulpy.
It's like the sinister, like Big Lebowski, like spinoff.
I never even thought about that. Like Goodman was doing a variation on fucking Walter.
To me, it feels a little bit like that. Like it's more serious, a little bit, but it still
Well,
has.
that would mean that Nick Cage is the dude. That's a weird jump to make.
It is, but also Nick Cage is kind of like just along for the ride the whole like movie in a sense. He's not really in control of like what's happening.
That is true. He lets the circumstances control him.
Right, which is a very dude thing to do. Anyhow,
That's a great movie. That's very underrated in Scorsese canon.
really underrated movie, and I was like the only one in his whole catalog that I hadn't seen like until recently. So
I haven't seen The Aviator.
that's a good movie. My like underrated or like my not like that much of a it's not a big hot take, but like After Hours is god tier.
Oh no, that's
Scorsese.
That's a really great movie. I love the fucking gaudy ass 80s cinematography to that, and it almost feels like Scorsese doing Coen shit.
Yes.
The absurdity.
It's such a surreal like fever dream of a movie. Like it's so you feel like
said that Bringing Out the Dead is Scorsese doing De Palma. That's Scorsese doing Coen's almost.
yeah, no, that I think your Coen's comp is spot on, and the De Palma comp was for Cape Fear.
Oh well, I could see both a little bit. I mean, Cape Fear, yes. Bringing Out the Dead, I think I made that comparison actually. Like I was.
No, you
just
did.
Because I think that Nicolas Cage, what was Vampire's Kiss De Palma?
Ooh, I don't think so, but it should have been.
Yes.
Wait, hold on. Let me
Eyes
actually.
Snake Eyes was De Palma.
Snake Eyes was De Palma, yeah.
One of the best opening scenes ever. The rest of the movie's trash.
The movie is so mid. I don't. Snake Eyes was
fucking awesome.
Snake Eyes was directed by a guy. No, Vampire's Kiss was directed by a guy that did like nothing else.
Vampire's Kiss is really just that one scene with him reading the fucking dictionary.
What a great performance. What a great movie. Nick Cage.
You was just sitting there like, I have to edit this shit. We're supposed to be talking about Lil Peep.
Hey, listen, as long as you do this, I get to just put really a long stretch where it's just one picture. That's you know.
Exactly.
I remember you were saying, oh yeah, Kittenpuke loved the Sopranos segment. And the reason I loved the Sopranos segment was because I didn't have to change the picture every 30 seconds. So I could just put a big ass Sopranos section and just be like, oh, thank God, I don't have to do anything else.
This is great that we're getting
great radio.
The raw editing process into the podcast. We're really giving our audience what they want. This was supposed to be on the Patreon, but you know, what are you gonna do?
Yeah. Hey, everybody, go out there, support our Patreon. You know,
exactly. Can't wait for the ambient album. Jermainson remix the sound of Patrick smoking a bowl during the podcast. Right. 7 minutes and 40 seconds.
All the behind scene features of us talking before we press the record button. That's what you're gonna get. That's what here's a preview right here. Oh, there it is. See? That's what you're gonna get on the page.
All right, let's stop antagonizing the viewers. They're frantically hitting the down button.
The people
we already have so few. We need to keep them around.
It's mainly Sphinx. Sphinx is just gonna yell at us in the chat.
God, shout out to Sphinx.
Shout out to Sphinx for blowing up our numbers. Thanks
Should
for the
All right, so what do we have left? We have
They come over when you're sober.
Real quick, I just want to say though that if you like Castles 1 and you like Castles 2, there is the Castles 1.5 bootleg comp, which is a very nice comp. It's a dope bootleg that cleans up all the last few remnants during the 2016 to 2017 period of Tracy and Peep collabs. It's a lot more in the middle, actually, in that it mixes a bit more of the cloud rap influences in there with the emo little sections that you see more so on Castles 2. So if you're looking for something like that, definitely try and seek that out. It's not hard to find. It's right on Reddit or something with a Mediafire download. You can get it pretty easy. But yes, we're on to Come Over When You're Sober 1.
Which was ended up being a very popular album. Like it had a lot of. I'm pretty like this is the one where he like it dropped, and you could feel that he was like a star, like when it dropped. Like it had a lot of chatter. I remember Awful Things and Save That Shit being like big songs.
Okay, so the Save That Shit sample is amazing. I love the sample on Save That Shit. And I can't believe, like, some other beat that I know samples that. That has to be the case. Because Kittenpuke found out the sample, Wyatt found out the sample, and I don't know that song. But I've heard that fucking sample. It's driving me nuts.
Yeah, I know some people were like, oh, even the Reddit
so
that I
familiar.
found
That beat sounds really familiar to me.
Right, I've had that same exact issue with other songs, but I know the Reddit wasn't even sure if this was the correct sample because they're like, "Oh, does it only sample like 2 like guitar licks lines from the song? Like it seems like a bit of a stretch." So I have no idea. It could be completely wrong. It's a very odd, obscure like song that I've never heard of any of the band or the song or anything like it, so I don't know.
Yeah,
well, I
and
love
like
the song regardless. So.
Yeah, I think that's a great song. I think Ben's Truck is a good song. I think my favorite track on here is The Bright Side.
Oh yes, The Bright Side is probably my high right next to Awful Things, but yeah, The Bright Side is a really good track.
It's like it just has that like classic like pop song feel, and like the way it goes into the hook. And like where he's like everybody's telling me life's short, but I want to die, like that.
The
I mean,
echo
and
just
he's
hits in.
right, and he's like yelling it like it's like an anthem, and you're like singing along with it, and it's such a downcast lyric.
Okay,
Right.
this was a good transition to what I wanted to talk about when I talked about his influences. Is that a big influence? Is I think that he was on EXO Tour Life.
Oh yeah, I mean people would lump Uzi in with the like the emo rap bucket, even though I think he was more of like traditional.
Mainly the hook. I'm talking the hook, but I think the hook was what hooked people, for lack of a better term. Like mainly the I don't really care if you cry, but that's a can't you hear Peep singing that?
Yeah, I could.
I could see
I
it.
mean, I could see. I think it's interesting that like Uzi is another artist who liked, pulled from some. Like if you listen to Uzi versus the World One, like it's like this is so pop punk. Like that's what it feels like. I mean, he was more of like like Manson, like Gigi Allen, like that sort of stuff was like he was like repping the iconography for those artists, but also like you could tell that he was like.
Do you think Lil Uzi Vert knows who Gigi Allen is?
I mean, he mentioned him in interviews a bunch of times. I don't know.
I mean, I know Danny Brown does. Like he had a great line at the end of Hottest MC about like hitting MCs he doesn't like with the same white mics Gigi Allen wiped his ass with.
I mean, Uzi said that he used to watch like them do crazy shit like on TV, like in performances, I guess. Like
okay, just real quick, just real quick, pause. I came out of the call. All right, I'm back. I fell out for a second. My bad.
He's back.
I'll cut this. Don't worry.
It's okay. This has been a problematic call, and I'm not
just
talking about my one comment that I made, but.
I mean,
don't worry. I'm sure no one.
No one. All right, are you gonna go?
I was gonna say no one noticed me being gone, so it's fine.
Oh, true.
Well, we're talking about Lil Uzi Vert and Gigi Allen, a sentence I never thought I would say.
Well,
No, yeah, I was there for that.
Uzi
I for like 5 seconds.
Uzi said in interviews that he was inspired by Manson and Gigi Allen, a couple
It's
of
just
them.
weird. I feel like rappers sometimes hear about shit. I got this from the Bill Cooper book too, where it's superficially you hear the name, Waka talking about how he knew Machiavelli, the Art of War, or that was Sun Tzu, but he knew Machiavelli. He just knew the Tupac album.
I mean, I don't know. I think, regardless, I think the Uzi and Peep, there's definitely a headspace there that they both operate in.
I mean, I think the punk rock influence in hip hop has definitely been growing. I think Danny was ahead of the curve on that. I think Flocka was ahead of the curve on that. I think that EXO Tour Life was definitely a punk, more punk than pop song that hit on a pop nerve.
Yeah, that was definitely I think between that song and Magnolia being big hits in the same summer were definitely the rap gone punk phase for different reasons.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah.
Brockhampton song could they had the boy band influence, but there was also a punk energy to what they were doing too.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, they were coming off of this whole thing of oh yeah, we came out of the Kanye was the Kanye to the Threads. We came out of that. We were a forum group, kind of similar, as much as the comparison is overdone. It's kind of how Odd Future was coming from just forum talk. It was we're just coming out of the internet. We did this whole DIY thing. Kevin Abstract used to stay after work at supermarkets to film videos in it and stuff like that and all that.
And that's how music in the mid to late 2010s and beyond as really that's how music is formed and collaborations and shit especially in a genre that is as young and constantly evolving as hip hop.
Oh yeah,
you're gonna have some guy you're gonna I listened to a whatever they're calling it a Hext or a Surge project last night, and it was the artist, according to RYM, is from Tulsa, Oklahoma. And you're how are you making this? And you're from Tulsa. The internet has just eliminated all barriers and boundaries, and
right.
The accessibility is so high that these collaborations between groups are formed on forums or people that are just hey, I liked your shit, I'll produce that or whatever. It's that.
Yeah.
It's so instantaneous and accessible that boundaries are continuing getting knocked down. And I think that's part of the punk phase too. It's that you don't need to be regional,
Yeah, no, you don't need to be. And the covers are just sometimes slapdash together collages of images, just like how punk albums would just be sometimes the collage instances. Before they would just here's a fucked up here's the dead Kennedys putting their little collages on the covers, and now we've got people who are here's my collage of 3 different hentai animes
right.
that are about vampires, and I'm gonna stick them together, and that's the album cover.
Exactly.
I feel Bandcamp has done a really good job of being a platform that facilitates this sort of thing by doing their 100% for artist days and letting artists sell their merch the way they want to. So I think they've done a really good job in giving them a platform for this sort of thing. But obviously, there's the artists who are doing it themselves.
Right.
You mentioned Dead Kennedys. One of the best things was when Dead Kennedys had an EP, and they put out it was just an A-side. So they said, we're told that they printed on there that we're told that home taping is killing the recording industry. We'll left side B on this blank so you can help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just go bootleg whatever you want on there.
No,
clever thing Jello by Afro ever did.
That and Nazi punks fuck off. Although that was halfway an accident, halfway not.
And Jello by Afro is definitely way cooler than Greg Ginn. After reading the Negative Land book, I think Greg Ginn's a complete asshole.
I think
I already knew he was an asshole. I didn't know he was that much of an asshole.
I think Joe Biafra is one of the few punks on one hand I can count who have aged well in terms of their attitude and like their outlooks on life. Like everyone else is just, you either realize that they're just dickheads, became dickheads, or just like or just like curmudgeons now. And it's like weird that they are like that given the movement they came out of. But what are you gonna do?
I mean, Mike Watt is obviously the prime example of somebody who stayed true to their ideals, and it's still positive. And Rollins seems like he's probably an asshole, but
Rollins, I think, I mean, other than the Robin Williams shit, I mean, he's probably, I think Henry has always had like a good head on his shoulders. I don't think he's ever done anything wrong, and given all the things he does do.
Like, his poetry's not very good, but his journals are great. So.
His journals are great, but it depends on, like, I mean, Get in the Van, Henry Rollins is a lot different from the Halsey Rollins that is around now, because, I mean...
That is true, and I think he'll acknowledge his own evolution, and that's what I respect about him.
Right, like, I think people have pointed out, like, have you ever seen this interview, Henry, where you're just ragging on this kid for being an interview, and you're asking, like, are you part of the scene? What are you doing to contribute to this scene? And he's like, yeah, I was a dickhead back then because I was angry and poor and hungry all the time. So it's like, you know, I think he's a bit remorseful, like he has had to calm down over the years. He seems a lot more upbeat now. I've seen some of his recent spoken word stuff. He seems like he's really into, like, the young kids movements and everything. He's as far from a curmudgeon as you could be in terms of, like, culture.
Well, in terms of giving back, he's always done that. Like, I feel like he's always been about going back to communities and putting back into stuff.
Yeah.
So, and publicizing causes worth publicizing and platforming. So,
right.
Even when he was insufferable, he was always being insufferable about the right things.
Right.
So, that gives him a little more leeway from me, even when he's being a dickhead. So.
Definitely.
Once again, we wandered off course.
Once again, we can't. Yeah. There's a lot of discussion that Lil Peep inspires, and
Come Over When You're Sober, Volume 1. First of all, wasn't this the title of an Evanescence song, or was it Call Me When You're Sober?
I think it was Call Me When You're Sober, but I'm not going to claim to knowing Evanescence song titles.
I just know that was like their big single on the second album. I don't know, like. Evanescence was a big deal for a second.
They were. I have heard some Evanescence songs, but I don't know exactly. I think it's Call Me When You're Sober. I think. Hold on. Yeah, it's definitely Call Me When You're Sober.
Kanye. We've mentioned Logic. Now I have to mention Linkin Park because when Evanescence was all over the radio, I thought like, some guy in an office came up with the idea to rip off Linkin Park with a chick. That was my initial thought behind Evanescence.
They never connected with me. I heard like the one album, I think, and that was it.
They weren't very good, but
no.
I feel like they sold a lot of there are so many people who sell a lot of albums that everybody's heard all of once and they can't recall anything from.
And that's kind of like
I think that era's pretty much died though with streaming. Like, what was the last album that everybody bought that no one can remember anything from? Adele?
I mean, I was... Yeah. Like the last Adele album. Or like Scorpion.
Maroon 5. No one bought all of Scorpion. We just listened to that for a fucking, like, thing in the chat.
No, but I mean... when you meant people that, like, got it and don't remember, like... People don't remember most of Scorpion, like, but it was a very popular album, so that's what I was kind of thinking. Like,
but I was thinking more people who like buy albums and like
buy
physical albums anymore, like digital albums and listen to them all the way through.
Probably the last Adele album,
right?
Or like yeah. Reputation, maybe.
Maybe Reputation, because I think people are probably listening to Folklore all the way through.
Well, yeah, but I feel like. Because this is going to have a way better reputation than Reputation.
But yeah, like you're right. Like didn't remember.
People will remember.
Yeah, there are still albums people remember, like this one. I'm not going to talk about it. I haven't heard it. I'm not going to talk about it. I got opinions, but I ain't going to say them. So.
It's too long, but
We're not gonna talk about it. Like, if I'm not gonna
I'm
say my
just
opinions. We're not gonna talk about the fucking
you don't
album.
have to
If
you
I
don't
don't
have
have, if I can't say my fucking opinions, we're not gonna talk about the fucking album. Moving on.
it's a great podcast. Great podcast.
I'm gonna reel it back in. I'm reeling it back in. Let's reel it back in. So come over with your number one. We've gone over a bit of the track list. We've gone over a bit of the influence. I will say that it is kind of funny that we're going off of all. We just got back from we're coming off of Hellboy. We're coming off of Lil Tracy and Lil Peep. And
listen
so it's
to
like
a little bit of
the
it.
only
It sounds
feature.
like Phoebe Bridgers.
You didn't have to say it.
No, fuck it. Let's talk about the goddamn album. Yeah, she's stealing from Phoebe Bridgers.
Oh, help me out here. All right, let's do.
I'm helping you.
You want to talk about it? Let's talk about it.
It's funny that Trace is the only feature on here, but he gives a good one. And it's also notable that this was pretty much that this song, as far as I'm aware, is what I can't remember if it was this song specifically, but it was like this song and compounded with like some other things that caused a fracture between Peep and Tracy for the short time before Peep's death.
Well, didn't
that
Tracy
I'm
work on the
sure he
documentary
regrets.
though? So they were like, didn't Tracy
he admits that what he was like, although he still thinks that what he was angry about was a lot of things outside of Peep. He's just kind of regretful that it was like when Peep died, like they were sort of not on good terms or just angry at each other. So he's upset. Like he immediately went back. He was at the Peep tribute show. You can find the most heartbreaking performance of Switchblades ever, where he can't even get a line out while the crowd sings it a cappella to him. He can't keep it together, and he's just bawling on stage, and everyone around him is trying to console him.
That is
it's the saddest thing ever.
Really brutal thing to watch.
It is
really, really, really hard to watch. Like almost impossible.
It's very hard. It's very heartbreaking, and we're gonna get into, if we're gonna move into Call Me Over When You're Sober 2. There's a lot to get into with this in terms of the background.
Yeah,
it's not clean.
How I feel about this one, man. I don't know, man.
Okay, let's talk about before we get into the end of the background stuff. Let's talk about the actual album, which I will say that this is probably the weakest Peep album. Was this assembled after he died? This was assembled after he died. From what I understand, this was nearly pretty much done when it was done. It was all ready to go. And then there were production changes because after Peep died, Peep's mom, and this is me trying to remember this and going off Reddit forums that in a bunch of posts that were going off quick right after this happened, is that Peep's mom basically doesn't like any of Gothboiclique at all, outside of Tracy and maybe one other person. She hates MacNed. She doesn't like most of them. She's of that opinion where she's like, you people should have been protecting my son. Why were you encouraging his drug use? What's wrong with you all? You're bad influences. And so from what we understand, it's I think it's Smokestack is the produced all this. It wasn't the case. It used to be a lot more goth. There used to be more Fish Narc production on this and everything. I think what song is it? I need to pull up the screen. There's one of these songs is from Fields. There's just a reused one from Fields, but they changed the instrumental. So yeah, a lot of the instrumentals at least were changed for this. I don't know if there was any features that got taken off, but there was a lot that got switched around at the last second in terms of production on this album.
Yeah, and I think
the mess.
You hear it on I know people talk about Runaway a lot in that sense. I mean, that's one of my favorite songs on the record. And another one with you can't listen to that song. The song's lyrics are so much about escape and death as a way of that escape, and it's just when Peep says the lyric I was dying and nobody was there, and you're just it's a posthumous record. He's dead.
What it reminded me of? What it reminded me of was Mac on What's the Use. I just need a little bit, fuck a lot. I just need a lot, fuck a little bit. What's the use?
Yeah.
It
Yeah,
was
it's
just
just
like
it's so
a
morbid.
declarative statement from somebody who we can tell after the fact that it was actually, in fact, a fucking declarative statement, not just like a lyric in hypothesis or whatever.
And the track I was thinking of is "Life Is Beautiful." "Life Is Beautiful" was on feels,
Yeah.
so it's life, and the instrumental is completely rechanged. And yeah, I
That's
know
still
that made a
still a
lot of
really
people
good.
up.
That's a really
I
good song
think it's
though.
better than this version that's on Feels, and I think it's poignant that he brought it back. But I know a lot of people, this like the production change was stuck in a lot of people's craw. But I think that, and the problem, that's the thing, is that I want to make it clear that if what this about Peep's mother is true, this isn't this and all of it goes through Peep's mom. I know that for at the very least. So like, this isn't like the label. A lot of people are going like, "Oh, this is a cash grab from the label." Now, maybe you could say something about Everybody's Everything. I'm not going to comment on that. But in terms of this album, I don't believe that. This isn't the label's doing. This isn't a label trying to change around and get rid of Gothboiclique. This isn't some weird labels thing where they're like, "We got to get rid of all these indie kids or something." It's not what they're
No,
doing. So
his mom like executively produced the whole thing. Like she assembled it.
basically,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's been like that for a lot of his posthumous stuff. Like she did the same thing for the documentary. Like she screened
Yeah.
it and all that stuff. Like she had a hand
Right.
in it. Like obviously she
Right.
called in family friend Terrence Malick to to
Mm-hmm.
do some work on it. So
Right, and the Gothboiclique, from what I understand, is on, like, members are on that documentary. It's like, I'm
oh
sure
yeah,
they're, like, even if things haven't been patched up, I'm sure they're at least fine that maybe they could at least throw some in there. And I know Fishnark, I don't know if we're going to get to it, but the Goth Angel Sinner EP, I know there is a Fishnark instrumental on there. So I know that, there at least that got a release with, like, some of the content still
yeah.
kept in.
Because that was the Goth Angel Center is essentially the Goth Angel Center bootleg, but in EP form.
Yeah, I know at least some instrumentals got changed, right? Because people were still upset at it and still were like, "Oh, it's a label
People,
cash grab."
yeah, people were. It was good. The bootleg is great, but the actual EP that was released is still good. And
Yeah, I like 2 out of 3 songs.
people are just looking for a reason to be upset. I think.
Yeah,
I don't know. I
Yeah.
feel like people have a reason to be on guard after the Travis Barker X song made it on the radio.
I think people have a
That's
reason
fair.
to be on guard after the X Peep collab, which actually gets retroactively thrown on this album, by the way.
That's
if you
the
try
song
to,
I was talking about. That's the song I
Yeah.
was talking
Oh,
about.
I thought you meant. Oh, yeah. I forget Travis Barker's involved in that song. I forget that he's he's part of that.
That is easily the worst label thing. You take art from two like dead people and you put it together and you make it an official single.
Even
I
worse
guess
than
that's
that,
the
you're taking a Peep and I Love McConan collab, and then you're removing McConan, I Love McConan purposefully to shove in X. So it's not even Lucy's. It was an already finished song, and
Yeah.
you're shoving out one person for another and just half-assing it.
I guess that's where I want to kind of land the plane on this one is where do we see Peep's legacy? Should there be any more new Peep music? What is his defining statement? Where would you start a new listener? What is the one Peep song you would show to somebody who's never listened to it before?
Well, actually, before we do that, I don't know how much we really talked about the music on "Come Over When You're Sober" Part 2.
I'm
if
sorry.
we're gonna go,
if we're gonna go in, speed to the end there.
I know there's not much to talk about because I think you can really just sum it up with it's kind of "Come Over When You're Sober" Part 1, but it's kind of weaker, honestly. At least to me,
I don't
it's
see it
kind
as
of
that
weaker.
at all. Actually, I see it as a more obnoxious version of that. I see it as like very much amplified on all of the tropes on "Come Over When You're Sober" Volume 1. That it did kind of like Peep was kind of more subtly integrating his rap influences with his mall punk, emo punk influences on Volume 1. On Volume 2, everything's played up to 11 and primary colors and annoys me for the most part on Volume 2.
I'd agree with.
I think it's weaker, but I still like the album for the most part. Like I think "Hate Me" and like "Fingers" and
Life is Beautiful for a change it's still a great song.
And Cry Alone's a really good song, and Runaways are
Cry Alone is my highlight.
I
for this
like
album.
Runaway.
That entire
I like
guitar.
Runaway.
Runaways a really good song.
Runaway's
Like that,
good.
even with like the new beat or whatever they did changes to the beat or the mixing. Like I actually think it never bothered me. Like I know it bothered some people, but the mixing and stuff never bothered me because he's literally dead. Like it sounds like he's being like. And I think shout out to One Chops. He said this about I think Gym Class and Four Gold Chains, but like he said the way Peep's voice is like in those songs, it kind of already sounds like he's a ghost. And I feel like Runaway is the same sort of thing.
Right.
So yeah.
So yeah, I'd agree with that, Caleb. I'd also probably give a quick shout out to 16 Lines and Leanin', which although I don't think are as good as some of the songs we just mentioned, are still very solid tracks. After that, it kind of peters out for me, in regarding the other songs on here. They're kind of like, okay, it's kind of like it's no different than on part one with some tracks like Better Off Problems or Better Off Dying.
Better Off Dying. Better Off Dying's a good song. I like that song.
It's a good song, but they start getting a bit nondescript for me after that. Yeah, and then after that, so after this album, we had the Clams. We had the Clams Casino collab, the Four Gold Change, which is an amazing song and a great video that honestly should have been. Yeah, it probably should have been like you had the Goth Angel Center EP, yeah, but then you had the Four Gold Chains single, which is amazing and a great point. The music video is great. It's just such a nice. It's a eerie end note to Peep's career, that collab song, and the music video goes with it with Peep walking off down England in the nighttime. He's just wandering off after just taking like popping a pill and smoking.
It was my favorite Peep song until I heard Beamer Boy again. Then I had to rethink that, but it's still. I don't know the way the outro on this is really goddamn ridiculous.
Right.
So yeah, it's really hard for me to go against this song, and I don't know. Like, also I told you that I had like earlier in the podcast that I used to think of this as just a Clam song with Peep as like a garnish to it, and now that I have a renewed appreciation for Peep, now I have a renewed appreciation for the song.
Right. So, yeah, it's really strong, and the outro is haunting. Again, with the video on top of it, would you have that intro and they're just both going? It's very emotional.
It's a really like sad and kind of like chilling song.
Yeah, and I think Clams had said at the time, he was like, we were probably going to make more, but Peep had apparently like quite a few collabs lined up before he died. Like he was going to do an I Love McConan, I think, EP or something. I know he was talking to some other people, I think, at the time. Like he was branching out, and he was gonna do a bunch of like I think small collab projects with a bunch of different people following Come Over When You're Sober Part 2, but it just never came about. So after that, we had the Goth Angel Center EP. We just covered that. I like Belgium and the first track. That's slipping my mind. But that's a really good. That's a decent EP. And then we had Everybody's Everything that combined with the Doc, which I haven't listened to. Caleb's the only one who's listened to it. I know there's a lot. I know people are really mixed on that because I know at the time it was like, we need to get these songs on streaming. That's what, also like on the movie.
They put like some like fan favorites on streaming, which is cool, like Cobain and Witchblades and like Walk Away as a Door Slams and like Live Forever. You know, they have some stuff that's on. There's a McConan collab on there, like that was definitely made like while he was alive, like
right. So they were working on that EP or whatever, that collab definitely. And then I know that there's like a bunch of original tracks with somebody named Gabe. I don't know who that is, and I don't know what relation they have to Peep or how much that was posthumous or not. But I know apparently, from what I can tell, everybody hates him.
Yeah, they're definitely the low. Like the start of the album is like the low point. Like the second half of the album is like the good stuff, and the second half and the first half is like you know, the not good stuff, and then like also the stuff that's like, eh.
Right.
Like I feel like the songs like on here, like some of them are leftovers, but the back half is a really good like compilation, you know. So like I think the album's like, you know, like half good.
Right.
And like I said, compared to the absolute, you know, shoveling, how many verses in a closet can we find of XXXTentacion? This is not this is not the same thing.
It's not the same. Yeah, no,
you're not shoveling mounds of dirt on the grave like of the artist.
Right.
You know. So
which
it's not even it's kind of like it's not even like Biggie Tupac where they made like multiple posthumous, like 3 posthumous albums of like each, you know.
Right. Which,
no,
by the
they
way,
made more than that for Tupac, and I think they made 2 for Biggie. Like,
I guess this is like the Born Again of like the late 2010s.
well, it's better than Born Again, I would suppose. Ultimately,
yeah, it's probably a little better than Born Again. Yeah, I would think.
Yeah. There's still going to be more X albums, by the way. There's no way there's not. That man recorded he purposely recorded so much like verses in case he went to jail. He said that. He said I have 5 albums worth of songs recorded in case I go to jail.
He had 2 albums come out last year. He had been dead for like a year.
And didn't his mom say that she intended on putting out as much product as possible?
Yeah, she wants to keep his legacy alive or something.
Well, you know, here's the good people. We're living off borrowed time. So was X. So was Peep.
Right.
Rest in peace, Lil Peep. Rest in peace to Michael Brooks.
Yes. Rest in peace, Michael Brooks.
Yep.
Have a good week. Our outro music is by Can Cook, Stagnated Pace.
It ain't gonna never stop. 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 It ain't gonna never stop.
Time will tell. Time is yet to be conquered by man. But when the time is right, perhaps the greatest revelation of all time will dawn upon us.